Okay, so here we are folks, ready to crack into the next build in the Herbie Design Co workshop, and I thought I'd bring you along for the journey on this one. This is a breakfast bar that we've designed up with a couple of little tweaks since I drew up the design drawing for the customer. What we're actually going to do is include a kind of like a faux beam timber piece between the two legs, just at about footrest height. So it's a breakfast bar that'll sit probably about 900 high when it's complete. I think it's 910 to the top of the current kitchen bench, and we want to slot just above that. So the bottom of the timber top will sit just on top of that current kitchen bench. Much like myself, these guys are renters. They need a breakfast bar that's going to be able to go in there, look good, looks like it belongs, looks like it's built in. But when the lease ends and they move on to somewhere else, they can take it out, take it with them, and they're doing no damage to the property at all. So we've got our steel here. First things first, we're going to get that cut up. We'll build out the leg frame, and then once the timber roller is ready, I'll pick up the timber and we'll get the top knocked out. Let's jump into it and get this thing happening. Okay, so we're back at it. We've got all our steel cut up. I've gone through and I've just trimmed the edges with the grinder just to take the burr off, put a little bevel on it to help the weld take better. And again on these pieces as well, just taking the edge off. I normally like welding with my door open just to let the fumes and stuff out, but I don't know if you can hear it. There's a bit of rain out there and a fairly decent storm hanging around, so let's jump in, let's start welding this up. And we'll have the frame pretty much done in next to no time. So we've got the legs finished up. I've gone ahead, I've actually started to glue up the tabletop already. I like to do my big tabletops in sections. So this is 3 boards wide. The other 2 components are 4 wide. What we're going to do now, we're going to bring it all together and glue up the final tabletop. So let's pop the clamps off this and get into the big glue up. all glued up, and now we sit and wait. I'll leave it glued up overnight. I'll come back tomorrow, I'll pull the clamps off, and then we'll get into starting to sand this thing flat. And thankfully, all these glue joints are actually looking quite nice. There's a little bit of play in them in terms of alignment, but nothing too much. I personally don't use biscuits, dominoes, dowels, any of that sort of stuff. The glue joint is strong enough. All the other stuff is really just for alignment. If I can get a good enough glue joint by gluing up in sections and getting a nice clean joint, then I can come back and hit it with the sander, and it's going to give me just as good a job without the messing around with all those other bits and pieces. Alright, we'll let this set up and we'll come back at it when it's dry. Glue up done. Let's pop these clamps out. We'll start sanding it. I always start with belt sander. Belt sander, 80 grit, run diagonal across the grain, and then once I've got it flat and I'm happy with it, then I'll run length of the grain just to bring those cross marks out. And then my good orbital sander is currently in the shop, so I've got to bust out the little Ryobi battery powered one, and that'll get me finished up. It's not boring, it's not exciting, but we'll put on some good music and some headphones and we'll get this sanding smashed out. So I've saved you some of the boring stuff. I've jumped ahead. I've sanded the whole thing up. We've hit it with the belt sander, got it flat, pulled the orbital out, got it down to 80 grit. And so I've sanded it all, both sides to 80 grit. I'll come back through, and for anyone who's worked with Blackbutt or nice Aussie hardwoods before, you'll know that they're full of gum veins and that sort of stuff. This is reclaimed timber as well, so it's got nail holes and that sort of stuff in it. So I've backfilled those with resin just to give them a bit of character. What I'm going to do now is I'll come through, I've got a scraper that I'll use and I'll run through and I'll scrape the top off the resin just to get rid of the excess. And then we'll come through and finish sanding it. We'll hit it with an 80, 120 and then jump up to a 240. Once we get it to 120, we'll come back, we'll trim up the edges, get the edges and everything cut to size, edge profiles done, all that sort of stuff. And we'll get this finished up. So let's jump into it. So I spared you the bottom. We're all sanded up. I've set up to 120 on the bottom and 240 on the top. I've been around, I've put a heavy chamfer on the bottom edge and just a light one on the top. Just to break the edge on the top and give it a little bit more definition on the bottom. It's just the way I like to finish off my tabletops. It's kind of, I don't know, just a look that I like. I think it gives a nice tidy finish. What we're going to do now, and bust out a microfiber cloth, just give it a wipe over to try and pick up most of the dust. And then we get into the fun part. If sanding's the boring part, finishing's the fun part. I'm going to run this up with some Osmo, so Osmo Poly-X. It's just a hard wax oil. I'm not wedded to Osmo. I've used Osmo, I've used Whittle Wax, they're Evolution hard wax oils. I like them both. It tends to be whatever I can get my hands on at the time. I happen to have a tin of Osmo that I'm partway through using, so let's jump into that and get that on. So with the bottom edge done, I'm going to flip it over straight away, even while it's still wet, and seal the top. What that's going to do is it's going to make sure that with one side, both sides are sealed at around the same time, or almost instantly, and that way it's going to minimize any warpage, any twisting, any cupping that comes from having one side open and the other side sealed. It's a good practice to get into, especially when you're doing big tabletops and big panel glue-ups, is if you seal both sides at the same time, you're going to reduce any chance and any risk of warping from being unsealed unevenly. So let's flip it straight over, throw the top coat on, and then as we get through the top coats, we'll come back and we'll buff out and reseal any sticky patches that we might have, or any marks that we might have got. That's why we do the underside first, and that way we can come back and fix it later. So we're coming up to wrapping out the build on the breakfast bar now. It's finished. I've got the hard wax oil finish on it. I've done about 3 coats on the top. I've flipped it over. I use a sort of a rubber mat, non-slip mat that I use on my workbench whenever I have to flip over a finished top. That way it's not going to scratch, it's not going to move around on me. Now I'm popping in the threaded inserts, and we're going to start to pop those in place, ready to attach the legs. So let's get those drilled in. Simple, what am I looking at? 8mm drill bit, packet of threaded inserts. What I'll do is I'll pop those in. I'm actually going to come back and give another light sand at the bottom and put a second coat on the bottom just to finish it off a little bit better. And then we'll assemble it all and we're done. So let's get into it. So here we are, the breakfast bar, it's done, it's complete. I think I might have skipped over a few little steps on my footage, but you'll be able to get the general idea. We're all assembled now, it's all finished up. I put threaded inserts in which attach the tabletop to the base, and also the one little design tweak at the bottom that you'll see in a minute. It attaches those two. Let me pull you off the tripod, I'll give you a run around and we'll have a look at where it all came out and how it looks as a final product. So what I thought I'd show you as well, you can see in the background there, there's a couple of black sheets hanging off the garage door. That's how I do my final photos, my final product photos. Just gives you an idea on how you can stage without needing to completely set up the table in your house and put the furniture and whatnot all around it. This is one kick-ass looking breakfast bar. It's going to look absolutely amazing. The black resin through the middle just fills those voids. And as you can see down here, what wasn't on the design picture is we put a little faux beam between the legs just to give it an extra little design element, and the customer loves it. Alright, let's get this thing wrapped up. I'll get it on a truck, get it delivered, and we'll move on with the next build. Till next time, stay safe, keep building.